Good day, my friends. It's Billy Mandarino, the Now-ist, and you are on the Now-ist Experience podcast. And today we've got a worldwide known friend of mine who is a global transcendental leader. And I want to briefly introduce Shawne, a friend of mine, a former colleague in real estate, but also just an incredible light in this world. And Shawne Mitchell has a master's degree in consciousness studies and is a coach, consultant, author, and speaker, recognized as an expert in bridging conscious transcendental leadership and living a spiritual lifestyle. Her new book, Transcendental Leadership, Ageless Principles and Practices for Leading in a Time of Awakening, is a new narrative for the next level of consciousness leadership. In it, she highlights known practices that are portals to states of transcendental awareness. These practices open us up to align with universal wisdom, resulting in effortless flow, increased synchronicity, a calming demeanor, greater productivity, and a style of leadership informed by universal wisdom. Her wisdom, combined with her writing, speaking, retreat center expertise, and insights for her travels and experiences for her evolved into an international consulting and coaching practice. Shawne has taught and facilitated retreats and conferences throughout the world, and her 5 published books, most of which have been translated into several international languages, are available to buy on Amazon. I highly recommend that. Shawne is a board member of the Global Consciousness Leadership Guild and a board member of GATE, the Global Alliance for Transformational Entertainment. She is a member of several other international groups committed to collectively inspiring, supporting, and serving humanity's conscious evolution. Everybody, please give it up for Shawne Mitchell. And you have an audience of many, because we are all one, correct, Shawne? I mean, you're teaching about transcendental consciousness, and wow. It's so crazy, Shawne, that you and I worked as realtors together back in the day at Village Properties. And back then, I don't know how long ago, because time's kind of an illusion, as we know, living in this spiritual conscious realm. But you and I worked together at Village, and I knew you were a spiritual seeker. Back then, I didn't have this spiritual sponge that I am now, absorbing all of this conscious training, spiritual teachers, this work, this walk of life. The Now-ist teaching that I pursue and bring that light into the world. I didn't know to the extent of spiritual teaching and transformational coaching and retreats and guiding people through this universal wisdom that you're so adept in. I'm so excited that it's come full circle and our paths have crossed again. And I'm excited to have you share, what your book's about, what your teaching is about, and how you are helping transform this world right now. And this is transcendental leadership that is your mission. It is your mission, correct?
Well, first, Billy, thanks for having me here. It's really sweet to get your email and to circle back together. And I do remember our days at Village Properties in Santa Barbara, and that was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And in fact, I think in those days too, I was writing books on sacred space and feng shui because I had such a sense of the energy in houses, as well as people, but anyway, yeah, thank you. So my mission, gosh, that's it's in a way that's kind of a big question, because if I commit to a specific mission, let's say, then does that evolve? Does that change? Does that morph as, of course, our world changes, I change, I grow, we're all in where we're at in our journey. And so I would say that my mission, if you will, is kind of twofold. And I really do feel I can say this in a broad enough perspective that this may relate to most everyone. I really think it's everyone, but firstly, my mission is my own journey, my personal relationship with what I call source or God, spirit, universal wisdom. Everyone has a different perspective on what that means for them. And I've been fortunate that I'm really clear on that. And so my first mission, like I say, is what I want to say, which kind of gets back to my book too, my life, is that the better I can, like a radio dial or a tuning fork, access my relationship or my alignment with divine within, that serves my journey, that serves my spiritual growth, let's call it. And from there, my, what I want to call being, in quotation marks, you know, we'll say being, doing, my being, and I know there's not really a word beingness, but Shawne's unique Shawne being can contribute to others. And whether it's on a community or in my family or a friendship, then does that extrapolate into the outer world? Yes. I've been fortunate in the last, well, I've loved to travel my whole life. As soon as by the time I'm like ready to go.
Yeah.
But in the last maybe 5 or 6 years or so, I was incredibly fortunate to get an opportunity to work with a retreat center in Italy. And that put my whole perspective on another scale of being able to contribute and participate and network and become friends with this incredible spectrum of people all over the world, and leaders, retreat leaders, transcendental leaders. Quite a few of them I've interviewed in the book that we're talking about, the Transcendental Leadership book. I interviewed them because I wanted to have these people's stories and anecdotes and how they led, how they found their states of transcendence, so they were aligned with universal wisdom and spirit in order to inform their leadership, right? Inform who they were in the world, inform their being. So I guess that's kind of the twofold mission. The onefold mission of myself in my, attempt at continuing my personal growth, getting buddied up with spirit and so and the second one, there's a certain amount of surrender to how spirit guides me in how I can contribute to humanity, right? And then yes. I wouldn't even just say humanity, because I believe that, our entire globe, our entire cosmos is an organism, is a living organism, and that we should be taking care of our, our planet and our animal friends.
Shawne, so I love that you have interviewed these, I guess, divine beings on this planet, right? These transcendental beings that have, I love Rumi, because Rumi has this quote. He says, when you're born, a ladder is placed before you to escape this world. And I imagine that these individuals that you've interviewed in the book have ascended other rungs, higher rungs of this ladder that Rumi was speaking about, because Rumi was a Sufi, a mystic, a divine being who lived on this planet, I think in the 12th century years, way before Jesus. Actually, he was an ancient being. But could you recount some of the interviews you had in your book? I'm so fascinated to learn about, some of these personal interactions you had, maybe that didn't make the book, stories or anecdotal stories that came up through that process of bringing this book into the world.
Yes, however, I'm going to I want to reframe what you just said a little bit, if you don't mind. The people that I interviewed are regular people. They're not, I want to be careful how we frame divine beings. My belief system is that everyone, everything is got the spark of spirit, God, source. How can it not be? We're all created,
yes.
Right? But in the case of these particular individuals and leaders, is that they've they're on this path as well, and they're leading organizations, let's put it that way. So, are they, like I said, I wanted to reframe the divine being thing, because if I mentioned something, they'd be like, what are you talking about? However, what in the interview process, I had a questionnaire, and I asked, for instance, the questions were, well, what, let's call it practices, I call them portals in the book, but what kinds of gateways, practices, portals do you utilize to access states of awareness, presence, transcendence, in order to feel aligned with your notion of spirit and universal wisdom, in order to contribute as a really, really lovely, wonderful, gracious leader of your organization. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't stumbling blocks. That doesn't mean there's oopsie doops. Doesn't mean that there's mistakes that don't get made along the way. Anyone who's run an organization knows, that can be.
Yes, right.
But who are you in the midst of that? What is the being of your frequency, let's call it? Who's that in when we can suspend judgment, when we can stop talking, for example, and get comfortable in the silence and so forth. Anyway, I'll talk about a couple of them, but I guess I want to encourage people to read the book, because these are folks whose, I want to say, feet are on the ground. And to digress for 1 second, when I first wrote this whole notion of transcendental leadership, it came to me, and in around 2013, 2012, when I was in my master's in consciousness studies, and I needed to write my thesis. And like I said, this notion of transcendental leadership, because conscious leadership was a little bit, trend du jour at that particular time, but I knew that, I felt that having a deeper relationship with spirit on a transcendental level, and I should say that I learned transcendental meditation when I was 20, which has really informed my life, that I really felt that people, leaders, if they had some ability to access states of transcendence, it would inform their being, which would inform their doing in the world. So that was one of the questions that I put out to all of these people. And that became part of this chapter 4. That's all these categories of portals. We normally think of meditation as one of them. Well, yes, deep silence provides deep inquiry, provides an inner opening and awareness to states of transcendence. But, there's other ones. Well, Santa Barbara, I mean, when you're surfing, that individual out there, and I'm going to say that they're accessing two portals of, one is movement. We often think of yoga and qigong, but runner's high, movement, conscious dance. Could go on about all the different ones within that category, but then there's nature. And nature is one of my portals: meditation, nature, and inspired writings like Rumi or the Bhagavad Gita or Emerson or great scripture and so forth. Yes. The idea around asking these different individuals, and oh, by the way, at the time when I was writing the thesis, the professors had asked me to highlight leaders who had been, I might call, sacred activists in the world. And so at the time, there was Gandhi and Mandela, right, and Dr. Martin Luther King, and, individuals of that caliber. And for my book, though, I wanted, like I said, people on the ground today. You may have heard of a few of them, you may not. And that's kind of, to me, the key is this is not about being famous particularly, but it's about in your community, in your organization, in your life, in your family, you can also learn, find the practices, find the portals that speak to you, because I feel that, that's why I have 11 of them in the book, because there's, different strokes for different folks, as they may say. And so to digress and tell you now, then, maybe a story or two. Gosh, there's just, there's so many. I just want to encourage people to pick up the book. There's a great story by Jim Garrison. There's a great story by Heather Shea. There's a really great story of Vildrick Timmerman with the Mandali Retreat Center. I'll tell his story because I know that one really well. I asked him about was there a time when he was a little boy, maybe, because I do believe that our purpose, if you will, can get generated, usually does, get generated before we're 10 years old. Yeah, dig in when you start interviewing people, and they'll be like, well, I hadn't thought about that.
Yes.
It gets generated by the time you're 10. But it's like a seed, and it can, go in the ground, and you're a student, you're a householder, you might end up not actually even coming to terms with what that is for you ever, or it comes later in life. But in his case, and this story always chokes me up, is that I had just met him. I had been over in Italy on a vacation, and someone had told me, a teacher friend, about this brand new, like 6 months old retreat center in Italy. And I went there, and surprisingly, or whatever, synchronistically, one of the owners, this fellow named Vildrick, about 40 years old, so super cool Dutch guy. He was there too, and people said, oh, you should talk to this one from California. She's in the retreat business. And they said to him, and they said to me, you should meet Vildrick, and so on. So as it turned out, that he and I were leaving at about the same time, and he was driving to the airport in Milano, and I'll give you a ride, and we can get acquainted in the car. So off we go. And this is one of my proverbial questions when I'm getting to know somebody sometimes, and particularly someone who has a spiritual element to themselves. And I asked him, now mind you, this guy's 40, he and his business partner who built the retreat center, dig this, they had built this enormously successful music festival business in Amsterdam. I mean, they had, festival, 50,000 people, 5 days. I mean, we're talking seriously successful and huge, and they'd gotten burnout, and they started to go to retreats and decided to sell the company and build a retreat center. So I asked him, I don't even know this guy, right? We're just on our way to the airport. And I'm like, do you remember, maybe when you were a little boy, if anything might have happened that generated, you circling back in a sense to wanting to contribute in a spiritual way? And he immediately says, no, I don't. And then he's like, wait a second. There's this like deep pause. And I'm going to paraphrase this, of course. He says, when growing up, he went to a Catholic school, but his parents were not Catholic. They just thought it was a good education and so forth. In fact, he was, agnostic. He didn't believe in God, but, this is the school he went to. He's like 6 or 7 years old. And a little girl in his class, I don't know if she was in the class or the teacher said that she had cancer and she was going to die. And at this moment, he's, zipping down. I mean, this guy's, he's a macho kind of guy, right? We're zipping on the road, and there's this little, he's choking up as he's having this poignant memory. He says, I went home and I prayed to a God I didn't believe in. And I said, if you let her live, I'll believe in you.
Wow.
She lived.
Oh.
And it was at that moment he was having this like aha, that perhaps this had been an engine, that started the train, so to speak.
Yes.
But had gotten put away. And I have to tell you, I put my hand on his shoulder and we just connected. I mean, we just spiritually connected in this silent, heartfelt moment of, like epiphany, if you will. So it's stuff like that, I want to say, that's part of the book, where I hope it could generate for other, for readers, like, one person like this guy, for example, his name is Stefan. He was one of the guys, he was the creator, I think with his wife at the time, of the Omega Retreat Center in New York. And now he has Blue Spirit in Costa Rica. And his portals are nature for sure. And he also, I hope it's okay to say this, has, utilized some, what we might call plant medicine.
Yeah.
He's also a medical doctor. I mean, the guy's so great, and his retreat center is so sincere. But for instance, his might be nature. And then Jim Garrison, I would call him talking about yoga being one of his, and movement. I guess that's yoga too, in addition to meditation. But because I have these 20 different people, they're kind of.
Yes. So Shawne, what about, so your Dutch friend's in the car, what portal do you think he accessed in that moment to, was it just his memory? What was it?
Well, that's a good question.
You felt it. So what did you feel when you had that coherent energy in the car with him? The portal, maybe you felt the portal, maybe you were in the portal.
Well, I mean, he was feeling certainly a connection and awareness to his deeper self. I would say it's love, portal of love, and that can sometimes be service. In his case, and his partner, Wouter, I know for sure one of Wildrik's major portals is service. He loves supporting and serving. I want to call them the Mandali family, but his family is wife and children, and everybody works.
Do you feel that, Shawne, that this book is also of service? I mean, obviously to the world, to humanity. Is that your intention behind it?
My intention behind it was to get out of the way and let source.
So let it come in, right? Let it come through.
Yeah. And how it shows up. People would say to me, "Oh, what's your target market?" And I'm like,
everybody, right?
It's not where I'm coming from. It just, as an academic thesis, it was always like, I want to be a book.
Yeah.
Away.
Yeah, right. I don't have time for that, right? Yeah, it's too much, right? I don't have time.
So the pandemic, shows up, and here we are. And
and everyth's there. It is.
Life.
And everything is perfect, isn't it? When you get out of your own way and get out of, get into the way. The way is it's just, that's the flow, right? That's the divine connection to spirit, to source, to the oneness that we all come from, return to. I love that you say service was his portal, or love was his portal, but it was love and service of love. I guess being in love and then in service was what came through him, it sounds like, because that's where I think we should all be in. That's a portal we should all access, the love, and then being of service with that love, or using that love to serve people, or serving people so you can experience the portal of love. Would that be accurate, you think, to say?
Say that
So
again.
like to serve people, to be in service. I believe that is our mission. And my mission, I keep saying mission because my book, The Now-ist, it similarly just came through me. It had to be a book. I was a calling I could not answer. And the word Now-ist came to me. It didn't exist. And it just became this something that I had to answer the calling. And it came through to me. I felt like it came through to me to be of service. I feel like we're all here to be of service. You're, with your book, I feeling of being of service to this planet that is right now in some stress, some overwhelm, some anxiety, some disarray. I think you might agree with that. We've got the fears of Russia and war, and we just came out of a 2-year pandemic, and you were in Italy kind of on the front line of the pandemic, right? When you were there for
Yeah.
those 2 years. So it just seems like service and love. I mean, if you can be of service, you're going to experience the portal of love. That's my experience anyway. I guess that's the question.
Well, you know, interesting. That's chapter 3, where I talk about the traits. And the traits boil down to, I guess you could say, under 3 categories. And that is, you know, once we understand that I believe, I should say, that we're aspects of spirit, having, what's that, who said that? Was it Bohm? You know, Desjardins said, you know, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yes, love that one.
Yeah, if you haven't got to read his stuff, Pierre Teilhard Desjardins, if I can correctly, brilliant. When we start accessing states of transcendence, when we begin to claim that awareness, that presence alive within ourselves more frequently, we cannot, like he said, we cannot not serve. And it doesn't matter if you serve because you love to cook. You serve because you're home raising children. You serve because you drive a bus. This is not about anything that in our collective perspective is what we might call successful. No, I think God is just saying, you know, align with me, let me express myself through the unique you.
I love that.
And if you're juiced by cooking for your family or walking the neighbor's dogs or whatever, it's going to naturally surface because your frequency, you're attuning for it. That like attracts like, and so flow shows up, synchronicity shows up, grace falls out of the sky. It's not that our life becomes effortless per se. It's our perspective of how we flow through, you know, challenges. You know, do we have to pay our taxes? Yes. Does the car break down sometimes? Yes. But is our mindset one of, well, let me take a look at this, you know, thing that showed up today that is definitely no fun to deal with, as opposed to, you know, anger.
It's surrender, isn't it, Shawne? It's an active or positive surrender is what I like to call it. It's a positive surrender.
Yeah. But again, you know, grief occurs, tragedy occurs, and chaos in the world occurs. And I still feel that on an individual level, deep spiritual awareness just will begin to flow out into the world. We know that now. You know, anybody who studies science and quantum theory understands that, you know, everything's made up of the same stuff, and that there's connection. You know, it's a hologram in a sense. I'm not an expert, but I, read the science. The science is there now. The hard data, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, for example, has for over 40 years been doing hard science research to highlight this. Now, way more research is being done all the time.
Well, Shawne, speaking of the quantum, how do we access, I mean, in your opinion, I know what I'm just asking, I want to ask you because I feel so honored to have you here and to connect with you at this level. I definitely feel like we are in a coherent energy field, you and I, connected with that higher source and that higher quantum, if you will, the other realms. I mean, Einstein said the fourth dimension was time, and the fifth dimension is the quantum realm. I've accessed the quantum, or that, that amorphous space that is energy, that we are energy. You get to greater feelings. The soul just wants to expand, I find. The soul wants to feel immensity and be omnipresent and omniscient. But how do we access that to serve what's going on right now? Like, do you feel, obviously you must feel the energy of the Gaia of the earth, if you will, right now, the energy, there's a negative energy on the planet right now, obviously conditioning for 2 years of the pandemic, global consciousness, global energy. We're putting some of that energy into the earth, right? We have negative energy, it's going somewhere. And then we go into this situation in Russia right now where we haven't really had a complete respite from the fear, because I think we had the global virus of fear was more dangerous than the COVID virus itself. What portals do people access, listening, watching, to try and upregulate higher levels of consciousness to help this Gaia, this earth energy that's becoming so heavy right now?
That's a big question.
I like the big questions, Shawne. I like the big ones.
Well, I feel that it's got to do with suffering, and from the individual, and I don't have to go into all of, how all that, people depressed, from the individual, communities, countries, the planet. And in Buddhist teachings, suffering really is an indication of ignorance. And that we're not connected, and that comes from a sense of separation. So if I were to suggest, here's the key thing again, in terms of these portals, gateways, how to access states of transcendence, they're different for different people. And that's one of the things I think was unique about my book, is that I've got these 11 categories and I go into them: meditation, nature, creativity, art, movement, the 4 paths of yoga, and so on. The key thing is to find, you almost need to find the one that is yours.
Yes, has to pick you, right? Has to choose you.
Right, and like I said earlier, in my case, I've learned, I have 3, meditation, nature. It used to be movement when I was young and athletic, very athletic, and water skiing or snow skiing or something like that. And and inspired writings. And not only can you, in an individual, have more than one, they also can change over a lifetime. I'm not going to get runner's high now. I have 2 hips. So, so that's kind of hard to answer, except I really encourage people, well, first of all, to find out for themselves, but as much as possible, if you can quiet yourself and kind of take the time to pause. I have little notes that say pause in my house here. Mm-hmm. Pause and claim that your relationship with spirit, because I feel that spirit's always here. But when I say hello, it's here.
Would silence be a portal then?
Well, it is, but that comes out of the meditation and contemplation category. So yes, deep silence. But some people say, oh, I can't, the monkey mind, and it's so difficult and so on. And yet, perhaps when they're singing, painting, drumming, dancing, that's when the thinking can step back, right? I mean, I love watching great basketball players.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, the unspoken communication and flow is incredibly cool to watch sometimes. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about. There can be a silence that's not a literal silence, because there can be a lot of noise going on.
Inner, right?
It's that, like you said, pause, surrender, willing to do deep inquiry, willing to just surrender.
I think is it Melville that says God's one and only voice is silence? I think that was Herman Melville that wrote that. And I remember reading that quote and just thinking, wow, that's profound. Because if you really want to connect with source energy, God is, you have to be still and quiet. Like, and I think Lao-Tzu says, when muddy waters still, they become clear, right? From the Tao Te Ching.
My most favorite chapter is that one. When I read that, Shawne Mitchell's translation in particular, that's what I call chapter 15. I read that. Oh my gosh, did that speak to me? I can be an agitator.
Can't we all?
Muddy waters are
Can't we all? We like to mix it up. We like to mix it up.
Yeah, the disruptor. So us is a huge personal lesson in, can I be patient while the muddy waters become clear? And right action arises on its own.
I'm just taking that one in. I'm taking that one in.
Without speaking or moving. It says something like this: the master, without speaking or moving, right action appears on its own.
Yes.
Something like that.
You're right. And it's,
and
it's just like
one of those inspired writings I'm talking.
Oh my God. Shawne, have you ever read Nisargadatta's book, I Am That? Nisargadatta Maharaj, he says, he created karma yoga, or he coined the phrase karma yoga, which means actionless doing, which reminds me of Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. Is that, and that's verse 15, you said? From the
15, that particular one we were talking about.
Yeah, I just think actionless doing, that's just like the muddy waters stilling, or being, letting the sediment just falling, just float, and just be good with that, be okay with that. And that's when the abundance shows up, or the synchronicities show up. The timing is good. You get in flow when you quit trying so hard to clear the water. Be the agitator, like you said, we got to settle this stuff down, but you just create more. It's like those dandelions. I'm going to knock down all these dandelions, and they just create more dandelions. You have to be in that stillness to access. That's a phenomenal portal. I think that we should all get more engaged. I think we would affect the planet and the global energy and the Gaia, which is the name for the earth energy. We'd affect it in a powerful way if we could just all become more silent and still, right?
Yeah. I encourage people, whatever might be their frame of reference for prayer, or maybe, reading something, but, the point right now, I feel, would be having an intention in one's mind in quiet silence or prayer contemplation that, sends love. I know it sounds corny, sends love to the planet, sends love that all beings be happy, all beings be happy. That includes our animal friends, and our planet. And, what's happening in the world, we just need way more love and understand that it's suffering and ignorance and the sense of separation. I've said lately, we're so arrogant that we think, we're just a blip, right? A significant, extraordinary life experience here, but it's still if we don't think empires have come and gone and come and gone and come and gone,
Yes.
and we think we're so important.
Get humble, right? Get humble. Get humble. Well, I want to take the last question I guess I have for you is one of my favorite topics, and you mentioned it. And I also mentioned it when I was reading about you earlier. And there's a chapter in your book, I believe, on synchronicity. Is that true, Shawne? Synchronicity is one of my favorite, I guess, favorite occurrences in this physical time-bound incarnation that is Billy Mandarino and Shawne Mitchell. Can you share a synchronicity with me? It doesn't have to be from your book. It could be one in your life. I just adore these spiritual breadcrumbs that show up in our lives.
Well, yeah. That's, alignment talking, right? And I asked, like, don't be subtle, Blaze. I don't know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
I was working, here's an example. I was working at La Casa de Maria Retreat Center in Santa Barbara for, I want to say 8 years-ish. And as you know, when that terrible fire in 2017 came along out of Ventura and the backside of Montecito and Santa Barbara and so forth. And then that actually was the time when I had right in there, a month or so before, had gone to this retreat center in Italy because it had shown up out of a teacher that I knew, and he was teaching courses there and had done a little, hey, this is going to be, this is a really cool new place. And I clicked on, wow, this is beautiful. And one of my brothers works for American Airlines, and I was going to visit a girlfriend in France, and he says, well, you need to fly in and out of Milan. And I'm like, well, where shall I stay near Milan? And so this came up, and I thought, well, I'll go there. And I wrote to them and so on, because, I was in the retreat business too, and so forth. And so I was there, and that's when I met Vildrick. And he says, like I said, when we were driving back to the airport, he says, gosh, could you help us? And I said, oh, I would love to play with you guys. You have no idea that's going to happen, going back. Write us a proposal and so on. And I'll, Skype you with my partner. And I eventually did Skype with the partner. And then we had the fires in Santa Barbara. And we closed the retreat center for a while, and then we did all the cleaning up after that. And then, as you know, on January 9th, my birthday, by the way.
Wow, no kidding?
In the middle of the night.
2018.
Yes. The rain came and more or less destroyed La Casa de Maria for that time, and 125 houses and 25 people. It was just, can't even go there. It's so horrific.
Yeah.
Well, I'm unemployed now, and within 3 weeks or so, I was on an airplane to Italy.
Wow.
And they said, I've stayed there at the retreat center for a month. And the guys said, will you come back? We'll do a working visa and a contract and help you get set up and get your car to use and all that kind of thing. And just like that. So that was kind of to me, really,
Definitely.
I couldn't have strategized moving to Italy. I mean, I have to tell you, I would pinch myself on the terrace of my apartment overlooking Lake Orton, and get choked up. This is real. I'm living here.
Wow.
And it just was grace falling out of the sky.
And it was on your birthday, right? January 9th is your birthday, yeah. 2018, when the Montecito mudslide destroyed. I mean, it was probably the worst natural disaster in the history of this area that I live in and Shawne did live in. it was just heartbreaking. But Shawne, that's a beautiful synchronicity, because I find it very synchronistic that this thing happens on your birthday, and only 3 weeks later that you are lifted from this debris, this disaster, natural disaster, to a paradise, an idyllic place that most people would just die to go to. It was like heaven, right?
Well, you know, it's like the ultimate fantasy. Oh, I want to live in Italy.
It's like on Lake Como, right? This is the lake region of Italy, right? Look, Lake Como.
It is. But I want to make sure that people understand it's Lake Orta.
Orta. I've never heard of it, and I'm Italian, and I've been to Italy.
Yeah,
I've never been there.
Because we don't want everybody to know about it. But
it's that special, right?
Oh, because it's tiny.
Wow.
It's only like 30 minutes drive from Maggiore, Lake Maggiore. So I could, you know, I had a car, go, you know, live in there.
And you're in a villa on the lake, right, Shawne? Is that what you're living in?
I was living in well, at first I lived at the retreat center for a while. And then I got apartment condominium in this, you know, like a 9-unit, 3-story building on the side overlooking the lake.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I probably could pull up.
How far was Lake Como from you?
Lake Como's a couple of hours.
Oh, it's a ways. But it's the lake region. That's part of that region, correct, of Italy?
Yeah, it's north of Milan. And so the lake region, if you were to think of, Milan and then north.
Yeah.
In Switzerland, then you've got Lake Garda, Lake Como, Maggiore, and tiny Orta and assorted other ones. But the thing that's so sweet about Orta is it's not a tourist place, except for, some of the Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny. I mean, you can actually, in a day drive around, it's got this sweet little island in the middle of it. And I lived right in the perfect place. So wow. Anyway.
That's a magical, oh my gosh.
It was magical. And then COVID, and that was harrowing, and here I am.
But you were there during COVID. So talk about being in a place that you synchronistically aligned with or attracted into your life, out of the worst disaster into an idyllic paradise that was just right for you. And that was where you needed to be at the time. And there was you surrendering and saying yes to it, right? Not thinking, oh, I can't leave Casa del Maria because you've been there for so long. And right, you could have gone the other way, but you said yes.
Well, I have an adventurous spirit. I didn't have a partner. My 2 sons are grown up and have lives, and I didn't have any pets. And so, just put everything in storage and
it was perfect.
Surrender.
Oh my gosh.
Surrender.
You gotta surrender.
Yeah, not to say that every day over there was
well, because that's life, right? Life's not supposed to always
the plumbing goes to say, or the electricity goes off, and I'm not exactly calling and speaking English to the guy who needs to come and can you come right away? Yeah, we'll be there tomorrow. 2 weeks go by.
Yeah, that's it. That's Italy for you, right? That's Italy for you. Let's just take it easy. Let's go have some. Yeah, let's go have a nice dinner and a walk.
Yeah, and, that's easy when it's not
andiamo mangiati.
Electricity.
Oh my gosh, Shawne, this has been an absolute joy for me. I'm so grateful for this time that you shared with us and this light that you shined on this conversation. I'm so excited about your book, Transcendental Leadership, Ageless Principles and Practices for Leading in a Time of Awakening. Could there be a better time to awaken than now, given what the world's going through? I think your book, just like you going to Orta, is perfect. There's a lot going on in the world, and I'm encouraging everybody listening, watching, if you're on the podcast, please, get off your podcast, go to your computer and go to Amazon and look up Shawne's book, or go to ShawneMitchell.com. It's Shawne with an E, SHAWNE, Mitchell, MITCHELL.com, ShawneMitchell.com. And she is a light in this world. I'm so grateful to you, Shawne. And thank you. And peace be with you. God bless you. And namaste.
God bless you too, Billy. It was really a fun conversation. And thank you for letting me meander and jibber jabber. And
it was beautiful. And I'll talk to you really soon.
I hope so.
All right. Peace to you.